we have a surprise from Tesla. Giga Texas is hiding refresh Model 3s in plain sight. These are all refresh Model 3s, as you can clearly see. These are Model Ys, but these are Model 3s. And there are too many of them to make me think they have been transported from California to Texas. We know that Fremont does not exactly have all that much space, and I presented this question earlier. Why doesn't Tesla move some production from Fremont to Giga Texas? Texas has so much space. Fremont, not really. When an analyst goes to that factory in Fremont, they always say that the factory is overcrowded. So maybe Tesla decided to do something about it now. Now, it's also possible that Tesla is just making the Model 3 ludicrous, which is going to be the performance model, basically. I'm not sure yet, but I'll try to find out more about this. On X, there have been many bears that claim that this person passed away due to an issue with the Tesla because of unintended acceleration. But today we found out that Mitch McConnell's sister-in-law was drunk when she drove into the pond. It's a sad story, but we found out that it is not Tesla's fault. So Tesla here has been exonerated. The blood alcohol content that was found in her blood was 3 times the legal limit. Here's some important news for us Tesla stock investors. The Biden administration just now finalized stringent new tailpipe emission rules that will force automakers to toss most of their gas-powered models to the curb by 2030 and sell primarily electric vehicles. The new fleet-wide standards will start with vehicle model year 2027 and phase in gradually until fully implemented by model year 2032. New vehicle sales must be roughly 2/3 electric. In the US, last year, only 7% of all of the auto sales were EVs, pure EVs. However, their goals include not just BEVs, but also hybrids and plug-in hybrids. There seem to be some exceptions for some vehicles. However, senior administration officials who spoke with reporters by phone said that they expect 56% of all of the new vehicles sold in 2032 to be fully electric. So it doesn't seem like they are going to be too lenient with the rules. Now, I personally think we don't really need to enforce this because it is going to happen anyway. But I also love it when an EV drives by me when I'm taking a walk outside and I don't need to suffocate and pollute my lungs. These new rules will also make the US auto manufacturers a little bit more competitive over the long term because they will have more urgency to transition to EVs now. Look at how smart V12.3 is. It knows that the gate may open like this, hitting the car, so it creeps.
Forward, there's a car behind us. It's continuing to creep. This gate actually swings out.
Oh.
There's enough room. It waited till, and now that it hit the sensor, it's waited for the gate. That was absolutely perfect.
I once had a situation where the gate opened towards me and I was like, oh, that's not great. And then every single time after that, I left more space in front of the gate before I triggered the sensor. But it just knows it can happen. Here's V12.3 in downtown Houston. It's a 43-minute drive, starts in downtown and then goes to the outskirts of the city, I guess. No interventions, no takeovers, a perfect drive. Quite incredible. So we are seeing these things from multiple different people, not just from Omar. I was also reading the comments under yesterday's video, and I do see some people having some issues still. So it's definitely not perfect, but you have to admit, it has made incredible progress lately. Here's another person with 0 disengagements or any critical interventions. It's sped up, so it's about a 10-minute drive. And Bradford says V12.3 just drove me to work flawlessly. My commute went from me having to disengage the system multiple times to trivially easy for the Tesla to complete. And I found this. I'm not sure who put it together, but this is incredible. I think it's edge case 411 on X, and you can see how he rated FSD v12.3 compared to previous versions. At a first glance, there doesn't seem to be all that much improvement over the old versions, but there are a few things that are critical that are much better. For example, 21, proper behavior at yield signs. Before, he only gave the FSD beta a 3. But now he's giving it a 7. Roundabouts before used to be pretty bad. Now at least they're a 7 based on his experience. And intervention-free drives certainly got better compared to V11. So based on his experience, it's a huge improvement from V11, but not a huge improvement from the previous V12 version. Remember the election at Giga Berlin? Which, if Tesla lost, then the union would have gained influence, which would have not been great for Tesla. But now that the election just finished, we know that even though the union has gained some influence, it now has 16 out of the 39 seats. They are far from a majority, and hence their influence will remain limited. So the union lost. The union made some accusations. When people were fired, it was usually done without objection by the Works Council, which did not even hear from the affected colleagues. This is the opposite of Works Council work for the employees. The new Work Council will start working next week, and IG Metal says that it will push for hiring more temporary workers, longer cycle times on the assembly lines, appropriate line breaks, no more salary deductions in case of illness, and more. So do expect the cost for Tesla at Giga Berlin to go up by a little bit. We now have the world's first Cybertruck teardown. This is the Cybertruck battery. The seat risers are castings attached to the battery pack enclosure. Here's another photo. This teardown is not from Sandy Monroe, by the way. We are expecting a teardown from him as well. This teardown is from the Autoline network. Sandy Monroe also just released a new video about the Cybertruck, about its underbody specifically. Sam Corris from Mark Invest says, why is the media claiming an EV slowdown? It's a case of missing the forest for the trees. Year over year EV sales growth is deaccelerating. There was 113% growth in 2021, 59% in 2022, and 28% in 23. He says it's the wrong thing to look at. The thing to look at, he says, is market share. Gas vehicle sales peaked in 2017, and you know what happens with an adoption curve? Year over year, growth declines as adoption increases. So what does this look like for EVs? What makes the auto market more confusing is that it's not a monolith. Each time an EV launches into a new segment or price point, a new adoption curve begins. The various overlapping adoption curves ultimately result in an overall adoption curve. And I think the most important moment will be when an equivalent size gas-powered vehicle is going to be more expensive upfront than an EV. Right now, let's say I want a RAV4. The sticker price is $33,000. The Model Y is $44,000 and $36,500 after the federal tax credit, which is not available in many places in the world. Look at all of these Cybertrucks. It does seem like Cybertruck production is going very well. We're not finished yet. There is more right here. A whole bunch of them just lined up, waiting for customers. I don't really care about deliveries when it comes to Cybertrucks right now. I just care about production because we know there is so much demand for Cybertrucks. As the market gets flooded with Cybertrucks, the resale price of these Cybertrucks is dropping. The same wholesaler that sold his Cybertruck for $244,000 last month just sold another one for $171,000. And you can see that there have been multiple sales actually, $244,000, $195,000, $189,000, $175,000, and now $171,000. Tesla has just updated its referral program. When someone uses your referral code and buys a Model S, X, or Y, not the Model 3, they will now receive 1 year of free premium connectivity in addition to 3 months of FSD. We can clearly see that Tesla has more demand for the Model 3 based on this than it can supply at this moment. And for referring your friends to buy Tesla vehicles, you also get 10,000 credits and can redeem it for 3 months of FSD, I assume. And Omar says, your friends and family will never stop thanking you for making them buy a Tesla vehicle. Omar makes a bullish Tesla stock prediction. The clouds over Tesla's auto business are still there, but there are a new group of smart money investors who are interested in increasing their stake in Tesla. These are people who understand deep learning, often in the tech industry or tech investing. If Tesla stock falls because of weak deliveries or earnings, which is not unlikely at this point. They will be there to buy, he predicts. VCs, angels, employees of tech companies and startups, and students of deep learning across the world. And Omar knows this is happening because a few of them, I assume venture capitalists, have reached out to him asking Omar questions. James Dama just made a comment. What are your thoughts on Tesla already being able to deliver FSD V12 to hardware 4? Do you think they have found a way to downscale their higher resolution cameras on hardware 4 so they are able to use hardware 3 cameras for data? James Dama says, I would guess that hardware 3 and hardware 4 have different ingestion layers at the bottom of their video pipeline, but that most of the neural network is shared between the two systems. If they do this, then only the ingestion layers for hardware 4 need separate training. So maybe they have been able to do this with a combination of simulation and hardware 4 specific data. There are a lot of different approaches that could work, and it seems like they have found one. If you remember, Tesla just had a bit of an issue with hardware 4 FSD V12 installs. But James Dama seems to have full confidence that Tesla is going to be able to deploy FSD without any issues to hardware 4 vehicles as well. We actually have some major Elon Musk news. So we know that Starship just reached orbit earlier this month. FSD is going end to end and people are really happy with the updates. And Neuralink has now been implanted in a human and it actually works. Yes, it is true. This guy on the right is completely paralyzed down from the shoulders and he cannot move his hands. And yet here he is making chess moves. Now I know it's 2D chess, it's not 3D chess. But he is making chess moves while holding a conversation at the same time. So he does not need to be solely focused on the game to actually make moves. He's holding the conversation at the same time. Now, the whole video was pretty boring. You pretty much saw everything that you just needed to see about it. But when you think about it, it's incredibly impressive. And you can see here, he's talking, he's looking at the screen, playing chess at the same time. And long term, it is possible to shun the signals from the brain motor cortex past the damaged part of the spine to enable people to walk again and use their arms normally. And this is actually important to us Tesla stock investors because this is more proof that Elon Musk has done the impossible again. I think we all remember not too long ago when Elon was getting called every name in the book from people who accuse him of fraud for Neuralink. These people owe Elon and the Neuralink team an apology. The possibilities of this are endless. He's also able to play Civilization 6 for hours and hours, to which I relate. It's one of the more interesting games that I played. I haven't played it in years, but I absolutely loved it. So Elon is making history again, and it won't be too long before Elon makes history and Tesla will be a part of that move. Elon Musk says Neuralink's blindside implant is working on monkeys. If you are railing against a guy restoring sight to the blind, consider that you might be the villain in this story. Bradford had an interesting FSD experience. So this happened and I didn't have my dashcam USB stick in. The car went too far past the line into a roundabout and it rolled back 1 whole foot, so about this much. It was not a heartbreaking sensation of going backwards, it went backwards. Do you remember that drama with Sam Altman when he was fired as the OpenAI CEO and then hired back very quickly? Well, new details are coming out. And Elon Musk says it's wild. Microsoft, which sort of owns OpenAI at this point, the CEO of Microsoft said this to the board members: if OpenAI disappeared tomorrow, we have all the IP rights and all the capability. We have the people. We have the compute. We have the data. We have everything. We are below them, above them, around them. Remember that OpenAI is supposed to be a non-profit company, and Microsoft obviously is a for-profit corporation. As Elon Musk's OpenAI lawsuit continues, we will probably uncover many details about what actually went down, and I assume it's not going to be pretty. 0 disengagements for the last 3 days and 14 trips. We are seeing things like this from people that I have never really seen or never really followed before. Now, he says that this particular station was a bit uncomfortable, but still, there was no disengagement here. Xiaomi CEO just said that Tesla has the unique advantage of being able to raise the prices of its electric vehicles, a move that other companies cannot pull off because they're risking huge losses. Maybe what he meant was that if other companies increased prices, the number of vehicles sold would be reduced substantially, but not in the case of Tesla, and Tesla also is profitable. The current EV market is so competitive that only Tesla dares to raise prices, he said. So we are basically seeing here the competition capitulating to Tesla officially. As for the SU7 vehicle, that CEO believes the vehicle will be highly competitive with the Model 3. He cites better specs, solid materials, and high sourcing costs. Is it really better if it's much more expensive? Volkswagen is ready to bring autonomous driving to large-scale production, which would be the first vehicle manufacturer to develop a level 4 autonomous driving service vehicle for large-scale production. If you guessed that it has 6.9 LiDAR units, you would be wrong because it has 9, 5 radar units, and 13 cameras. It will only be capable of operating in a defined area, so it's not a threat to Tesla.
Look at this. Okay, hold on. So, even though our navigation says it needs to go forward past this to make a U-turn, it's recognizing that there's a lane here it had no idea about. Still turned into the lane despite what the navigation's telling it. So, this is awesome. It's never done this before in this section here.
Well, clearly FSD is getting better. Here's another no interventions drive. I believe this is 1 hour long commute without any interventions. There are too many of these now. Now, if you could just do me a favor and sell all of your Tesla stock as I buy more, I would really appreciate that.
Tesla's taking the castings further and further, as we'll see on this truck. Here, the rear seat, the structure for the rear seat is a casting. So they've taken that rear casting and now they've extended it here with a rear seat,
and
as well as the front seat.
Yeah.
The front seat's also on castings.
On casting.
Instead of just a stamping, which is a typical roll for stamping for a seat track, they're castings. We are kind of challenged that we have to go deep into virtually every electrical system because it's not all 48 volts.
Interesting.
Some of it remained at 12 volts.
And so,
so-
because the perception out there is it's all 40.
Yeah, it was my perception. Yeah, 48, boom. You know, they swallowed the pill and did it. And it's like, well, yeah, they swallowed the pill and did it, but not everywhere.
Underside of the front suspension. I'm certain that this is some kind of an air duct or something, or maybe it's to gather mud, because this has got a great big, huge area that I could fill up with mud.
Yeah, so I mean, regarding the shield, Sandy, definitely with you, definitely an aero provision, probably also to help from stone impingement at the leading edge.
When you look at even their tow hook, similar, it's a little bit simpler than the Rivian execution, but essentially they're bolting in the side here of the vehicle. It's probably hard to see there, but there's recess provision. So when you hit something, it'll just essentially won't even shear some of the bolts off. They just come loose and then start to move rearward, which is kind of interesting.
One open connector there for high voltage, and so this could be provisional for another package. This could be an additional form of charging, and or if you want to have something in the bed, not quite sure. That's one of the things that we're probably going to dive further into. But in several instances so far, we've seen some connectors, both high voltage, what you're seeing on the screen here, and then also low voltage, like right here, for example. This is below the rear aero shield next to the hitch. You're seeing connectors that are just plugged at the end, meaning they're unused. They're not actually going to an address within the vehicle. That electronics bay is actually cantilevered over the rear end of the battery pack, and it's a cast aluminum piece. So to me, when I'm looking at this, one, I believe that they're probably using that electronics bay for some measure of structure, whether just the battery pack itself to better stabilize it or stiffen it, or they may be using that to stiffen the body structure as it's bonded to it, you know, or fastened to it. So that's quite a change in terms of the overarching architecture between outgoing or previous battery packs that we've seen in electronics bays relative to them. You know, again, I'm talking about that plan view dimension, right? You know, fore aft of that electronics bay. That's quite a departure for Tesla in terms of that specific area of the battery pack, and then having all of these vents hanging out the bottom side like this.
These spot welds, I just started looking at them. I can't believe how well they're done. Remember when we got the first Teslas? I about fainted. I couldn't, there was impedance, it's splash when you don't have the tips right and whatnot. These things here, they all look like little teeny dimples that, you know, were put on with a machine tool or something. They really did a big, I mean, these guys should be teaching welding classes to the rest of the planet.
You know that Sandy Munro chooses his words carefully and he doesn't praise Tesla unless Tesla actually really deserves it, so it means a lot coming from him. Farzad just did a pretty detailed post and it got 200,000 views. Let's check it out. Tesla's AI brain is alive. If you have been watching the Tesla space closely, you know the company has been working towards a self-driving solution for a solid 10 years now, absolutely. You may remember Elon Musk's infamous time to unveil the D and something else tweet from 2014, the something else being autopilot. It's still unclear what he meant by the other part. Since that day, there have been countless moments where Elon promised that full self-driving technology was around the corner for Tesla vehicles. Comments like 3 months, maybe 6 months, definitely, and 2 weeks are burned into the minds of Tesla fans and followers alike, and not in a good way. 2 weeks often meaning 2 months. 4 months, 6 months. The slightest whiff of the technology being completed would send folks into a frenzy of excitement, which would lead to very high expectations followed by disappointment. It has been a flywheel of sadness. Of course, with the benefit of hindsight, we can agree that everyone involved was being far too optimistic, at least those that believed. There have been many, and I mean many, that thought this development was years or decades away, with some thinking that this technology wouldn't be real in their lifetimes, and I think they are changing their minds now. These folks have been looking more and more correct as time has gone on, but not anymore. We have reached a point in Tesla's arc where maybe, just maybe, this time is different. And the reason why is artificial intelligence. Now, when I say AI, some might say, oh, here we go again with today's buzzword. Sure. Yes, I will admit, almost every company out there has figured out a way to use AI hundreds of times while they talk about how amazing their products are, and especially on earnings calls. I think it has been established that the more often you use the AI word on an earnings call, the higher your stock is gonna go up. I am sure that we'll start seeing AI-powered broom companies popping up in the coming months. I fully understand if you feel like this is yet another example of throwing around buzzwords. But in Tesla's case, there is evidence that points that this may not be the case. This might be one of the first truly life-altering ways AI is deployed in our everyday lives, similar to how ChatGPT changed the way we thought and interacted with AI, but in the physical world instead of the digital world. If you're not using something like ChatGPT, you're just left behind. One of my favorite prompts is when I get an email asking for something silly from me, I paste the email into ChatGPT and say, reply politely, making feel that person like a moron, but be polite. I'm gonna skip the part that explains how Tesla's FSD works. The biggest difference between how Tesla is approaching the solution versus everyone else is the labor that's required to make the car drive itself. Where everyone else is using human labor to write the code necessary to make the car drive itself correctly using a complicated and expensive web of sensors on their cars, Tesla is using only 8 cameras and superhuman coding capability with AI to do the same exact thing. And because of that, Tesla needs a lot less sensors, only 8 cameras and an onboard computer, which significantly reduces costs. And then, as we have seen with FSD V12, Tesla is able to make improvements to the software very quickly, faster than any human-based solution. With V12, we have seen 5-year-old cars go from driving like a drunk monkey to now driving like an incompetent teenager who's trying really hard. Farzad just came from a 60-mile drive in both highway and city traffic. The only interventions he had to do were to park the car in a parking deck and park the car in the garage. And not only these FSD updates came out faster than before, the Tesla team is also signaling that this is going to continue. So watching Tesla over the next 3 to 6 months is going to be incredibly exciting. I think we are at a point where you want to pay close attention to Tesla stock news every day, for now at least. Even if you are a long-term investor and you don't care about the short term. It's not a guarantee, of course, but A breakthrough could possibly happen at any time. I'm not predicting anything, but I'm saying it's certainly possible now. And that's it for today's video. Like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you in tomorrow's episode. Thank you so much for watching.